Hey, Jordan, how's it going?
Hey, what's up?
Not much. I'm actually just feeling very inspired. You know, I'm having one of these moments where sometimes you can take a step back and see how everything's playing out and just feel this feeling of we're part of something big here. We're part of something really beautiful. I'm having one of those moments today.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's like American democracy, right? We know America's made mistakes. We know that sometimes America doesn't always get it right. You know, I think we can all agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I have to say, when I see the beautiful American democracy in action, I gotta really admire it. I think it's really a beautiful thing, even if sometimes I don't like the direction that it goes.
Sure.
And just seeing in the Senate the other day, the Democrats bringing this really historic voting rights legislation to the Senate,
Mm-hmm.
And to ask politely the minority party if they could maybe proceed with a debate on that, and then have the other party just say, no, thank you. You know, you might not like the result, but that's democracy, baby. You have to take a step back and just say, wow, this is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing that we're a part of. And I was really inspired by this.
Oh, of course. I mean, you're not always going to get your way, and I think people need to grow up, especially some of the Bernard brothers. This is, we're adults. We're going to have to negotiate, and what they said was, the other side said was, that's not what we want, and so we're going to have to find a nice bipartisan compromise. Otherwise, nobody wins. So this is, I think, pretty straightforward stuff. I just think the extremely online lefty types just clearly didn't understand that when you have sweeping attempts made by one political party to disenfranchise millions of people, they also get to shut down any attempts to kind of rectify that situation. That's just how government should work.
It's great. That's how the sausage is made, as we say here in DC. I've seen some of these online lefty types. You know, they're complaining about this. They're complaining about Stephen Breyer. They've been targeting poor Stephen Breyer. Mm-hmm. They've been saying things like "retire Breyer" and some of these things.
Mm-hmm. Shameful.
It's very disappointing. Is Breyer? Listen, he doesn't owe you anything.
No, he doesn't.
And they don't get this.
No.
It's very unfortunate.
Shameful stuff.
Yeah. I do have to warn you, though. I don't want to lower the mood here or anything. I have heard rumors. Some of my little birds have informed me that Ken was possibly planning on coming to the building today.
God.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know
he's going to storm the office.
Yeah.
I'm right here. I've been sitting here for the last 10 minutes. Would you mind letting me in?
Oh my God! Don't move. His vision is based on movement.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, guys, there's nowhere to sit out here. Can you please let me in?
Okay, you
said you called the Capitol Police, right? For
yeah, we got to get security in here, get the Capitol Police, and let's head over to the panic room, because this is not. I was not anticipating this.
No, I have scoops. Do you guys want to hear scoops? I have them. It's about law enforcement.
I think he's threatening us. He's threatening us right now.
Go. You're having a party right now? I'm hearing some commotion.
Oh, sorry. That's my wife and her sister. They're in the other room. I didn't know that it came through that clearly.
You're vibing.
Okay, yeah. Ken, so not only are you messing with our audio quality because you're coming from some kind of a cocktail party, one of your hoity-toity events that I guess high society events that you regularly are
the media
hanging out
the soirees that media people just live in.
Yeah, exactly. But you've also gotten us in trouble again. You're pranking people again. You're making all kinds of people upset online, Ken.
I never do that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, neither do I. Usually people just, when I give takes on politics or history especially, many people are just saying, hey, good job. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I never have this issue personally, so. Who is this guy that became developed this weird obsession with you this week though? Because it was very strange. You inspire all kinds of weird meltdowns from all kinds of odd characters. Who is this guy?
I didn't know who this was until exactly what you described. But his name is Shant M, and I don't. To this day, I don't know who he is. But he's very mad at me.
Enigma. Shant the Enigma.
He's a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Yeah, so Jordan, remind me what happened with this guy. What's it? His name's Shant? What is it?
I guess. I
It's
don't
a
know.
weird
I just kind of saw the stuff like later on. I saw Ken had upset this guy, and it was because the guy did a tweet like saying that lefties would not be okay with shoplifting from Walgreens
right, yeah.
if it was like their podcast that people were stealing, which is like,
can you imagine if someone were to steal a podcast episode?
I mean, fucking go for it. Like the stuff, like I don't care.
The thing is,
you wouldn't download a podcast.
Yeah, I mean that's like it, right?
Many people do. Yeah.
The conflict became so bitter, and I didn't intend it to be, because I thought that comment was sort of charming, because it's like something my dad would say. It would be like, when it's like once I start taxing podcasts, then you kids will stop being lefties. It's like, Dad, people have a podcast business that's taxed like anything else. You know what I mean? It's just like some very like boomer idea. So I thought it was sort of charming, but I guess he didn't take my quote tweet that way.
It was extremely cranky. It was an extremely cranky tweet from Chant.
What was the first one again? I just remember the one of the replies being like, "You're not used to this, are you, Ken?" And I was just thinking, it felt like the robot in that Stanley Kubrick movie. It's like, I can't do that, Dave. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about?
He was trying to like troll you back, and just it wasn't really working. It was falling flat because like no one really was getting us back. It was kind of pathetic. It was like, slightly embarrassing. A real feeble attempt. And then obviously people just like in droves came to like dunk on him. It was very funny.
I kept trying to, I thought maybe there was some subtext I was missing. It's like, you're not used to that. I was thinking to myself, what is that? Is that a term?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Reference to something? But I didn't understand.
I think he just thought he was like referring to like, oh yeah, you usually just pick on those hapless, gullible conservatives, but now you've got a real challenger. I read it as like something kind of stupid like that.
Once you pick on someone your own size, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it felt like, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, I don't know. I was kind of confused through the entire thing, because then the next thing was you're way too sensitive, and I was like, what do you mean? I was just asking. Like, I didn't understand what did I do that was sensitive?
And then I think you said you had the politics of Nancy Pelosi, if I remember correctly.
That's true.
That's a new one.
Like, that's true.
Yeah, totally. That's me. Yeah. my
Hit dogs holler,
background.
I think is the expression.
Mm-hmm. I'm wearing a t-shirt now of the clap emoji.
Yeah.
It's awesome, dude.
And was really delivering
dozens
and dozens of hundreds of flowers and roses to her office just earlier this week. That was very thoughtful of you, actually.
I reenact the ripping of the pages of that legislation every morning.
Mm-hmm.
As one does, yeah.
That's lovely,
very strange. Ken. Yeah. We haven't even had you on the show since the Naomi Wolf incident as well.
Oh gosh, these are piling up, huh?
Or am I mixing them up now? Because that was the
mm-hmm.
that the John Sims one? Or was there another one?
The Naomi Wolf thing preceded, and I think was trumped by the Matt Gaetz.
Yes, of course.
The Matt Gaetz stuff.
The Lee Harvey Oswald incident.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, today he's talking about the military and how he'd like it to be run. He didn't know that Lee Harvey Oswald was served in the military.
Unbelievable.
Or no, that was
really
Candace Owens,
stuff.
Actually. She said that she accused me of photoshopping a picture of him. And I thought that's just another kind of subtext I wasn't understanding. It's like, oh no, she literally doesn't realize that this is like factually true and this is a real photo of him. Because in the like far right mind, it cannot be that someone served in the military and maybe there was a bad person in there somewhere. So
can you imagine someone in the U.S. military doing something bad? That would be... I couldn't even imagine.
Our troops.
Yeah.
These colors don't run, baby.
That would be too crazy to even contemplate.
I mean, 4th of July is around the corner. I was talking to a Canadian friend who's going to be in the States for this next week or 4th of July week. And I was like encouraging him. He's going to be in New Jersey. I was like, you need to take the train down to DC for the 4th because it's like insanity. You got families with matching American flag outfits. Like people just fucking lose their minds. Like you have to see how crazy it gets here. What do you think, Rob, as like an outsider, even just watching from, across the border?
Well, I mean, that kind of shit is always strange, I think. We have our own sense of, like, nationalism here. Although, like, because July 1st is Canada Day, and we're trying to cancel Canada Day now. That's our thing that we're doing right now, which is upsetting the
cancel culture, huh?
Yeah, we are legitimately trying to do cancel culture to our national holiday of where we celebrate the country. But no, it always is kind of strange to me. But it's enjoyable too. It's part of the charm of America, having that kind of stuff. You know, as much as I might criticize certain actions that the American government has taken, I must admit that I do have that kind of like nostalgic view of, you know, having the hot dogs and the fireworks and the flags and stuff. I mean, that's cool, you know?
I have an Iranian friend that asked me once, she's like, oh, all these flags, the government gives those out for free? And I was like, no. She's like, well, how does everyone get them? I was like, well, you got to buy them. She's like, people are buying those? And I was like, yeah. She's like, but I've seen the polling. Americans hate their government. Like, Congress's polls at like 15%. And I'm just like, I don't know how to answer that, but everyone goes out and buys a flag. And honestly, the degree of the like disjunct I hadn't even really thought of. It's like, yeah, she's right.
But you make the flags in America, right? No, those are made by Bangladeshi children.
No, it's made by the government that ours hates most. And then we import them. It's like, oh, cool, makes sense.
Yeah. It's a land of many contradictions, shall we say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy. Okay, well, Ken, you got a big scoop this week, and we're gonna get to that. I want to talk about it, but to get into that, I wanted to talk to both of you about something that I think is caused a bit of an outcry among the sort of liberals in this past week, which is this segment that Tucker Carlson did about the January 6th riots, specifically where he basically accused the FBI of being involved somehow with allowing these riots to happen, or being involved in the planning of them somehow, or somehow the intelligence community being involved with these riots in the first place. And it led to this big backlash, of course. You had a bunch of other segments on like CNN and NBC and these kind of liberal media outlets of people saying like, what, how dare you accuse the intelligence community of being involved in something nefarious like that? And I kind of had this moment where, and just to preface this, this is not a defense of Tucker Carlson or Donald Trump or any of this stuff.
Yes,
but is. I did watch this segment, and I was kind of like, well, hold on here. Like, maybe we should like examine this a little bit. And I saw, Ken, you had some good takes about this as well, talking about the contradictions of January 6th and how we've focused endlessly on these random like MAGA boat dealership weirdos. And not the very weird contradictions and bizarre, unexplained occurrences that happened that day, which isn't something that I think that we should just like dismiss. It's the number one reason I think this is just because it's the kind of very simple idea of, we all knew, like we were talking about it, everyone knew something was going to happen on the 6th. You had Donald Trump, you had the president of the United States going for weeks, going, they're stealing the election. Folks, they're stealing the election. We can't let them steal the election. Come to DC on the 6th. People were very clear about this. You had these like MAGA people going online. They weren't shy about this, going on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and Parler and all these different social media sites being like, we're going to storm the Capitol on the 6th. We're doing it. We're going to overthrow the government. They were very, very clear about this. This was not an ambiguous thing. So the thing that kind of makes me wonder about this is like, if we all knew that this was happening, everyone knew. Obviously, if we all knew, then the intelligence community knew as well. The FBI, of course, they're monitoring this. Like, they absolutely knew that something was going to happen this day. And this is what kind of makes me wonder about some of this stuff, which is that, you know, we're talking about the U.S. government here. They knew that there was going to be a protest outside the Capitol. They knew what some of these people were planning on. And if they didn't want these people to breach the Capitol, it just would not have happened. I mean, it's the U.S. government. They've got people to ensure that these places are protected. We all know that if there had been like an anti-fascist or a Black Lives Matter protest, similarly, if they had been planning to storm the Capitol like that, there would have been this military presence. They would have not let them into the Capitol. And just the fact that they did end up getting into the Capitol and causing this big, crazy situation and that led to all this fallout. Personally, like, you can talk about the different reason for why that might be, but I do think that we shouldn't just like dismiss the idea that there was some kind of involvement with the intelligence community and this riot. And just because someone that we don't like, Tucker Carlson, is like advancing this view, and he's obviously doing it for his own nefarious ends, just because he's advancing this view, we shouldn't just arbitrarily dismiss it because of who it's coming from. Do either of you have any feelings about that? Like, there's certainly a number of weird, inconsistencies and unexplainable things that took place that day. Like, do you think there's anything to this at all?
I think people, or not that you did, but I think it's easy to fall into a trap. It's like, oh, well, if I accept this framing, I'm legitimizing Tucker Carlson, or validating his points or whatever. I mean, you could have those views separate from him, because he's not an authentic actor across the board on this type of stuff. If a bunch of leftists storm the Capitol, there's no way he would even suggest anything remotely close to this. So it's obviously disingenuous, and it's just to drive a point and ultimately give cover for a right-wing fringe that is part of his base. People love him. People love him on the right. So this separately from Tucker is, there's well-documented history of the U.S. intelligence community infiltrating movements, agitating, getting people riled up, and doing things like this. I'm not saying that's what happened here. Could have. I wouldn't put it past them. And I think we can have those views separate from Tucker Carlson.
I think that there's a long history of stunning intelligence failures, and that this one certainly wouldn't be outside of the norm if they just completely missed it, because these are political supporters of the president. Now, put yourself in the position of a high-ranking, FBI or Capitol Police or National Guard official. Are you going to be the guy, do you think it's going to be beneficial to your career to send the truncheons in and push out all these guys that are saying, we want Trump? Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't potentially some inaction on the part of Trump officials to allow this to happen for whatever reason, but the problem is we don't know. And my concern, and you mentioned this before, is that they're not going to go up the chain and try to find leadership elements and any sort of role they might have had in slow walking a response, because they're just too high up and powerful. And my concern is that they're only going to get this kind of low hanging fruit of these folks that if people broke laws and they should be held to account for that. But just today, Attorney General Garland announced that he's not going to be launching a Justice Department investigation outside of the Inspector General, which is much weaker. Into the previous Justice Department. And that, to me, is a huge mistake, because we should be looking at people like Attorney General Barr and just like the Secretary of Defense under Trump, resigned weeks before Biden was inaugurated under what I understand to be pretty mysterious circumstances. And, I'd like to see an investigation at the highest levels so that if there was, some desire on their part to slow walk a police response, then there could be accountability for that. Because if it only happens at the bottom to the weakest people, that's not going to be a very strong form of deterrent from a later administration doing something like this.
Yeah, I guess my thing is, when I heard this kind of get floated around, investigating the links, the possible links between the FBI and this incident, I guess that's the kind of thing that I started to wonder, because it always was a completely unexplained phenomenon. How did these people breach the Capitol? I mean, I think the easy answer to that is possibly that there's these pro-Trump right-wing elements in the Capitol Police, in these police unions, in this infrastructure, which we know that's true. So that was part of my thinking, is perhaps it was some of these types that were trying to allow these people into the Capitol because they genuinely just wanted Trump to, overturn the election results and institute this kind of new fascist movement. And I guess that's a possibility. The other thing that I was kind of thinking about, though, is that I don't think you can't really deny that Trump was kind of at war throughout his presidency with the intelligence community and the FBI. His constant railing against the deep state. You had them kind of trying to undermine him with the constant Russia stuff, the Russia investigation, the Steele dossier, and all these things. It does seem, I don't think it's that controversial that there was an element within the intelligence community that was kind of opposed to Trump. And I don't think this was based in any ideological difference, but it's more just the fact that if you look at the role of what the United States president should be, it's someone who's supposed to be kind of like the smiling face at the head of this empire that kind of gives everything this veneer of like, we're doing good things and we're spreading democracy and we care about human rights. And when Trump was in charge, it was just completely impossible to pretend that was the case because he's such a dunce. He's always kind of like openly saying, yeah, we're doing this evil thing because it's evil and we like it. So I think there's a number of reasons why, the intelligence community was legitimately suspicious of him and legitimately, wanted to undermine him. So that's kind of what I started to think when I listened to this Tucker Carlson segment, which is that I actually don't think it's that much of a stretch that potentially the FBI or someone in some element of the intelligence community wanted to allow this to escalate to a certain point to create this big media event, which then had the result of, if it had just been a little protest outside the Capitol, Trump would still be on Twitter every day. He would still be on the news all the time. And it had this kind of far-reaching consequence of like all of a sudden, leading to legitimate consequences for Trump. He's getting kicked off social media. He's been kind of marginalized politically. And so I guess, I don't know, maybe it's kind of a conspiracy. There's no way of like really knowing, but I was kind of like a little bit curious about about potential links with the FBI in this riot. And I do think there is kind of a possibility that they did allow that to get to the level that it did for that specific reason. And again, none of that is a defense of Trump or Tucker Carlson, nor is it a defense of the intelligence community because I don't like any of these people. But one thing that I did notice was that when Tucker Carlson started mentioning this story, all of a sudden people just intrinsically recoil and say, how dare you impugn the wonderful people at the FBI? They would never be involved in something nefarious like that. And I was kind of like, well, I don't like Tucker Carlson or Trump, but there might actually be something there. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, when the stuff came out in the near aftermath of the January 6th, whatever you want to call it, there were reports that emerged later on that the intelligence community was like using, the call records from like cell towers to see who was there, and like as a result, were sweeping up members of Congress and their phone records, and that obviously presents a civil liberties risk because that's just kind of unilateral warrantless surveillance for people who get caught up in that kind of stuff just by being nearby had nothing to do with. And think whatever you want about the third party doctrine, which is what law enforcement argues, like, and people especially on the right think like, and I guess some elements of the left think like, well, you hand over your private data to a company to use X, Y, and Z, use a phone, do something, you can you don't really have a reasonable expectation of privacy. And so when that story came out, I mean, people argued like this is dangerous, and liberals applauded it. Well, now we're seeing more and more of that kind of stuff. So it's troubling. This is they're going to accept it when it's hurting the right. But now, as Ken's story points out, that really helps set up this type of surveillance and whatnot of left-leaning figures. And as we've seen with Operation Iron Fist that Ken reported on last year, 2 years ago, you basically have another COINTELPRO set up right now in the intelligence state.
Yeah, because I wanted to mention too, because like when in our coverage of this, I think we tried to walk that line between saying like this shouldn't just be dismissed. This is a serious thing that happened. There should be some kind of an investigation. Some people should be held accountable potentially for trying to organize this, especially people that were like deliberately trying to like harm elected officials, even if you might not like those elected officials personally. But one thing that can happen is you can't like cheerlead this new Patriot Act 2 type situation where because you believe that's being targeted at your political enemies in the far right, that you're going to encourage the intelligence community to have these new sweeping powers, or for tech companies to have these new sweeping powers. And so we tried to walk that line. But as we're seeing now, and with the scoop you just came out with, Ken, that is indeed what's happening. And as we and as many people were saying, any powers that you grant to the intelligence community in an effort to go after what you might call right-wing extremism, domestic extremism, is inevitably just going to be turned against the left. And that is precisely what is happening now, right?
Yeah, there's a big both sidesism that ends up happening at the sort of senior executive level, where the political appointees and the senior leadership who run things, if they are authorizing a program to look at far right people, there is just in the real world there, you may brand the program as that and say, this is just going to be about white supremacists or neo-Nazis or whatever it may be. But the reality is, to sort of cover themselves, they tend to try to do an equal and opposite sort of thing where they're like, oh, and just to show that, I'm not biased against the right wing, we're also going to go after the, far left wing too. And this is a tendency in government that exists generally, because this is kind of how you protect yourself. This is how you make it, because invariably you're going to have people like Matt Gaetz and the Republicans on the intelligence committees that are going to be saying, oh, deep state, this and that. So, the Democrats are after us. So, one way they do to try to make it, create this verisimilitude of equivalency is to go after far left groups. And you see this happen all over. It's not just in intelligence world. When social media bans somebody on the far right, then, it seems to me that very often they'll ban someone on the far left too. And then the idea is supposed to be, see, look, so it's fair. But unfortunately, the factual data shows us that, in the case of murders, for instance, if you compare a far left group like Antifa to a far right group like white supremacists, there's no equivalency. So, on balance, the side I think that this would hurt more would probably be the far left. And, what I'm finding in my interviews with folks in the different agencies as the administration rolls out this new program to root out extremists, which, by the way, I'm not against, taking seriously if there's criminality that exists, but the devil's in the details. How are they applying this? How are they implementing this? And what I found, you guys mentioned some of these reports earlier, is that, they're going to be monitoring service members' social media on a continuous basis. They're working on creating keywords that they're going to, as Jordan said before, there's this idea that, if we just buy the data from a commercial seller, then it's not actually government looking at it. It's a private industry that's providing it. So, and that's how they're going to do this. And,
loophole.
I talked to an FBI agent, Mike German, who himself used to infiltrate white supremacist groups and is, broadly supportive of these policies of, at least the idea of taking seriously this kind of extremist criminality. And he said that, that stuff is really counterproductive. It's not going to work. It could become a sort of boondoggle where you just start throwing money at these sort of Silicon Valley tech firms. They're like, we're going to, come up with some kind of predictive algorithm.
That's so unlike the government too.
Yeah. When does the Defense Department ever waste money on private contracts? But, and he made the point that, a lot of this stuff is already known. A more constructive way to go about it would just be to look into the whistleblower cases that are filed. There are a whole lot. There's a huge backlog of them that are never investigated. And so, there are things that, one can do to take this seriously that does not rise to the level of, hoovering up all this data. The point I'm really trying to make with my story, which came out yesterday, in which there was training materials being given to, it's kind of a Navy law enforcement, in which they very loosely define socialist. There's a question, what type of terrorists are socialists, anarchists, and there's some other group they mentioned. The point of this is not that they're going to come in and kick down your door and arrest you. The point is that anytime you allow the government to start dealing in questions of ideology, things get sloppy, things get messy, and they're going to start abusing terms. Because as it turns out, they don't have the best grasp of these kind of concepts. And that's the point I'm kind of trying to make here is that, it might sound like a nice idea, but in practice, in implementation, it's never, it seems very seldom applied in a sort of sensible way.
It's not going to be contained either. This is going to have downstream effects, as we see with all these different synergistic efforts, things like fusion centers and whatnot. These ideas and these definitions and these overarching broader goals are going to have ramifications downstream. With cops or with law enforcement or with local government agents. It's going to be disastrous. If this kind of stuff keeps going, and it's no surprise the government and people in the government don't like the left because ultimately they protect the interests of the capitalist elite, and that's why they likened it to something heinous. There is a very clear difference between someone who thinks that a system in which companies exploit the labor of employees for profit is an unjust one, and people who think that Jews should be exterminated. There's a very wide chasm of difference between those two types of people, but to conflate them is unbelievably reckless. But ultimately, it wasn't to weed out what they ultimately see as harmful ideologies in terms of protecting people. It's to protect capitalist interests.
And what was the specific turn of phrase they saw? They're like people who have critiques of the economic system or something really like Orwellian
that was a different
language.
Document. That was a different document. That was the one that Ford Fisher tweeted out.
Yeah, okay. But this is what they do. Just think about how people on Facebook talk about concepts like, socialism or whatever. There's a whole, like, what people don't understand is, whatever the technical kind of like publicized goal of these programs is, there's a whole nother layer of interpretation and discretion that's going to exist at the mid and rank and file level. And so you're going to end up having people that post the kinds of things you see on Facebook about, socialism equals 2 billion people dead or whatever it is. And the reality is there's going to be some degree of those types of people interpreting, what does socialism mean or what does anarchism mean or whatever it is. And it just is not going to end well, I don't think. It seems inevitable to me that it's going to be misapplied and misinterpreted.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a country in the United States that's been just like inundated with anti-communist like propaganda
right, exactly.
for decades and decades. Like the whole United States domestic and foreign policy is completely geared towards anti-communism and ensuring that like no one that holds these views it really rises to any position of power. So and like these are the people that have grown up inundated in this system, inundated by this kind of propaganda. They're going to be the ones making these kinds of decisions and making this kind of equivalence. It's like, it's horseshoe theory, but being played out in terms of these like violent domestic extremist groups, which as you mentioned, have like no real like relation to one another. I think that's one of the things that's tricky for me, because just really since the Trump era started, since I really started trying personally to try and cover this stuff more, I've been really alarmed by the uptick in right-wing violence, which started in Quebec. It started in Quebec City a couple of weeks after Trump's inauguration with this mosque shooting, which was carried out by one of these people who was immersed in this far-right media ecosystem. He loved Donald Trump and other political figures like Marine Le Pen. He loved Ben Shapiro and Gavin McInnes and all these guys. It felt a little bit personal for me. This is very close to where I live. And we saw this like throughout the Trump era, similar incidents and similar like domestic terror attacks, really. Mass shootings of people that are like immersed in this ecosystem, in the Tree of Life Synagogue and the Walmart in El Paso, in Christchurch, New Zealand. Like there's been a number of extremely violent mass murders that have taken place by people that are really steeped in this kind of far right ideology. And there's this kind of segment on the left that's kind of tried to frame this as being like, oh, it's kind of cringe to think about this. We should just be completely ignored. And it's like, that's where I find really like it's difficult to figure out what the solution to that is supposed to be, because I don't think it should just be ignored. I think if you have this big law enforcement infrastructure, yeah, they probably should be devoting some of their endless resources to like rooting out this kind of right-wing extremism. But that's the issue, is you can't really trust these people to do this, because there's always going to be this false equivalence, and it's always not even a false equivalence. The more likely scenario is that any resources that are given to these law enforcement agencies to investigate domestic extremism is going to be focused more on the left than on the right, even though the violence is coming from one area. And then that is what I don't know what the solution to that is supposed to be, because I don't think ignoring it is a great solution either.
Yeah, well, I think we tend to be given this false choice. So, I interviewed a bunch of different FBI people that did counterterrorism in the past. And the impression I got was that we already have a ton of laws on the books. You don't necessarily need new laws. What you need is like a better application of what already exists. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean, like surveillance again, it's a false choice between surveillance. Like, as I mentioned before, you can take whistleblower complaints more seriously, start getting at that backlog and looking what's actually already being disclosed and reported. What one FBI agent told me was that, in cases that he's investigated, it's rarely a secret when it's, in law enforcement, if there's what's called an insider threat, someone that has these extremist views and they're engaging in criminality. Everyone in the unit knows about it. They probably know about crimes the guy's committed. It's just that they report it and the agency doesn't want to look at it because it's going to create a scandal for them. So, just looking at actual criminal acts that already exist without having to create entirely new sort of thought crimes, essentially, that could go a long way towards, because my understanding is a lot of this stuff is not very subtle. It's not like there's these clandestine think back to the kind of far right sort of like neo-Nazi types that we might have met in our lives. They're not very subtle about it. And so my understanding is that it's sort of a misconception that there's any kind of secret that we have to root out. It's pretty much all there in the open.
There's been overtures from the Biden administration on top of this military training document that they want to root out and weed out extremism. We've talked about it before on this show and elsewhere. And, the constitutional issues that raises is, and while we might not like people on the far right, and we might think they are detrimental to the health of this country, to society, whatever, the vast majority of them are just hateful but still have a right to believe those things. That is what this country was founded on in many respects, and that's what constitutional law has evolved to understand and protect over the years. Even as something as repugnant as the KKK has been protected at the Supreme Court. It's like, look, as long as they're not hurting anybody, they can be as stupid and hateful as they want. That's the joy of living in a free country, right? Now that protection, it obviously is under threat in this cause or this crusade to weed out extremism. What I think there isn't enough nuance applied to is the difference between, violent militias and people who are actively planning to take up arms and do X, Y, and Z, and people who simply hold these beliefs. And you saw that reflected in the military training document. You saw that reflected in the stuff Ford Fisher tweeted out. In a general, sense, that's what the Biden administration and his officials largely believe, that all of these things across the political spectrum, if they veer too far out of the left or right mainstream, pose a threat. And it's not a threat to one another for the most part. It is a threat to their power, to a two-party system where they just transfer it back and forth, to the capitalist elite, to the corporate elite, to the the politically connected and well-to-do in this country. Overall, I think people need to consider, and I don't think liberals really take this to heart as much as they should. And especially, I think as this stuff continues, if they really hammer on socialism and communism on this kind of stuff, MSNBC is going to eat it up. Because that's just people who have been, in their menchies for the past several years. And it's just like, okay, well, we get rid of these people.
Well,
and then I can tweet about SNL without harassment.
Right. Yeah, you want to leave as little to discretion as possible. Because as soon as you open that up, it's going to hurt the extremes on either side. And unfortunately, the extreme on the left is much less like the view that there should be income redistribution is going to be viewed as an extreme sort of thing, whereas on the right it looks much different. So it's like, again, we have a ton of laws on the books. Many of those laws are being broken by people. I mean, FBI agents that were very supportive of the general thrust of this kind of thing. Several of them told me that if this is applied to any sort of speech framework, it's going to be a disaster because so as one was telling me, after any big disaster, 9/11 is sort of the, archetypal example, but there are many, there's a tendency to kind of want to look like you're doing something and be like, oh, we got to pass a lot of stuff and do a lot of things. When certainly you want to do things, but that might not mean changes to policy. It might mean, again, just applying stuff that already exists that is just not being done. Like I mentioned the whistleblower complaints not being acted upon. There's tons of protocols and things that are selectively applied. You could just apply things that already exist that are better. This notion that you're going to pass a domestic terror law, something I heard again and again from both liberals and conservatives in law enforcement, is that they already have plenty of laws. It's a myth that you have to create entirely new ones to be able to get at groups engaged in criminal activity. So
everything that happened on January 6th was already illegal.
Right.
You don't need a new set of laws.
Doing 9/11 also illegal.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Those YouTube videos you keep sending me make a different case. But
Yeah, it's just it's alarming. Again, it's the kind of thing that I find really perplexing, because I don't think doing nothing to counterbalance this increase in far right violence, the rise of the far right. I don't think doing nothing about that is a good idea, but at the same time, I'm leery about anything the United States law enforcement community, the intelligence community starts to do, because inevitably it's just going to be turned on people that I feel like don't deserve it. There's kind of a similar phenomenon going on right now in the media. I don't know if you two have noticed this as well. I know Adam Johnson from Citations Needed has been really good at covering this, but this kind of like crime wave narrative that now we're seeing, how, throughout last year after George Floyd and after these mass protests, there was this kind of suggestion that we're going to start taking about systemic racism seriously, and we're going to start talking about this. And lo and behold, it's a year later, and now you have it. I feel like there's this concerted push by the mainstream media to kind of suggest that now crime is getting out of control again. And often this is tied to the defund the police movement. And it's kind of left viewers to kind of imagine that because all these police departments are across the country are just being defunded left and right, that's why this crime wave is happening. Even though, as we know, no such thing has happened. No police departments are being defunded. They're in fact getting more money than before in many cases. But it does seem like there's been this concerted effort on the part of the media, people like Jake Tapper, and others, to kind of frame this idea that now we need to get tough on crime again. And it's not even like, it's really like reverting to this 90s kind of, tough on crime era. Which is another thing that's kind of alarming. Like you saw this, like CNN's going for like a ride along with the NYPD as crime wave worsens, and stuff like that. Have you two noticed this phenomenon as well? Because that's another thing that I'm kind of alarmed by, that I've been noticing a lot over the last couple of weeks.
It led to new executive orders today. I mean, Biden rolled out a slate of new executive orders seeking to crack down on crime in cities. I mean, this is something that you could see a Trump presidency too, a second term doing. Like this is similar to what he did like last year, or they're flooding cities with cash to put more cops on the street. They're going to crack down on people who sell guns. It's a tough on crime approach to a problem when you need more of a scalpel than a sledgehammer. I mean, punishing people has never, and just with harsh sentences, putting more cops in the streets has never been proven to reduce crime. It has not been proven to reduce recidivism. What you need is a holistic approach. And in this coverage today, the AP did a story in advance of Biden's speech and the executive orders, laying out and contextualizing this issue. And they explicitly say, they acknowledge, this rise in crime is related to economic concerns stemming from last year. And what they leave out the part that is because of an inadequate federal response. But the economic strife that afflicted millions of people around this country now puts them in positions where this is what many of them are resorting to stay afloat. And the response from Biden, Crime Bill Biden, is here's a bunch of money for new cops. Here's a bunch of money for gun crackdowns. Here's what we're going to do to be tough and shut this down as summer approaches. And the answer is not ever more cops. It is invest in treatment alternative to incarceration. It is invest in a social safety net. It is invest in a jobs program. Some friends, when this news went around, their immediate response is pass the American Jobs Plan, pass the American Families Plan. This is what would help. This is what would help people who are in dire straits, turning to violence to stay afloat, to find, food, survival crimes, whatever. And there's, separately, there are people who are just violent, but you treat that. You don't throw money at cops and say, get out there. Like it only is going to escalate tensions with an already tense relationship between communities and police.
Well, and it's important too that it's framed in this gun control way
Absolutely.
you mentioned, because that's the way that you get liberals with Black Lives Matter in the bio to completely get on board immediately and be like, yeah, we support this. We love it. And yeah, you're talking about investing in communities. Ironically, that's what the entire defund the police movement was about. Literally, it was very clear about this. But again, that was framed as being some kind of like crazy radical demand, which again, which led to crime apparently, which is, we all know that's not true, but that's the way it was framed. Like that was, I remember after the election when Biden's, and especially initially, it didn't look like the result was like as good as what they were hoping. They immediately pivoted to blame defund the police and blame these exact activists, for causing that result. And now they're going around, they're going out there and, implementing policy that goes specifically against all these demands and is almost certainly going to make all these issues worse. So great stuff there.
Yeah, I feel very wary about this meme that there's this, skyrocketing crime rate. Like, I'm, willing to consider that. Like, it doesn't seem crazy to me that crime would increase given just the continued degradation of the country and how much worse everything has gotten over the last year or so.
People going out and mixing more, and people are not in their homes as much as well.
Sure,
just sort of that kind of thing.
No, I'm open to that. But the notion that we are going to, I'm not a criminologist, but a lot of this data comes from I know in foreign policy, the military is giving us a lot of the data about our wars, and lo and behold, the military are the ones that end up getting the money and the resources that Congress gives them in response to these alleged problems. I mean, every major war, there's a sort of Vietnam was obviously the most infamous case, but this happened in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. They present data that is flattering to or advances their own interests. And a lot of this criminology data, not all of it, but a lot of it, comes from the police themselves who, they want funding as well. So it creates I'm sort of, I'm very hesitant to believe, without some context, what this sort of very simple narrative seems like.
Yeah. And similarly, you also have these rash of stories about these big businesses and big fast food chains being like, well, no one wants to work anymore. No one wants to work. We just can't hire anybody. And I guess we got to dry up those benefits soon, right? Because of course no one's coming to work, and it feels almost like a capital strike. It's like a stealth capital strike that's happening, where it rather than actually start to reevaluate their payment structures or actually offering competitive salaries, they're just instead of that, maybe could we bring child labor back? Could that be something we could do? Again, there's been this big propaganda push to, I think, kind of get people ready for this kind of thing. And the idea that any of these companies can just pay people more is still treated as this fantasy land idea.
Yeah, it's the same problem as with, they interview all these police officers. What do you think about the problem that you stand to gain a lot of money from if there's a serious problem? And then, who do they ask about the state of the economy? It's here's a small business owner. So how do you feel about the situation? It's well, I need more money, It's wow, that's a surprise.
Yeah. I can't believe it. What a shocker. But it does seem like America is getting to this point, the kind of, in terms of the economic fallout of the whole crisis of the last year, including including coronavirus and a lot of the economic issues that were coming up around the time that the virus really became prominent. It does seem like it's getting to this point, the can has just been kicked down the road repeatedly in terms of the eviction moratorium and the benefits. And now it is getting to a point now where the eviction moratorium is running out, and people's benefits that got passed in this rescue package are also running out. There's obviously not a new rescue package being passed anytime soon. And it does kind of feel like there is getting to a point now where these kind of things are going to start coming into conflict with one another.
Yeah, I like how the entire federal budget is increasingly resembling how I lived in my early 20s, which was you wait for the paycheck and then the minute you get it, you're living on it. You know what I mean? Where just every program that millions of people depend on increasingly is this high stakes last minute negotiation that Congress passes literally a day before it's set to expire.
It seems pretty sustainable, I think.
Seems healthy, yeah.
Yeah. This is the sign of a healthy economy, is what I've been told. I don't know. Have you noticed that, Jordan? It does feel like we've kind of been waiting for this breaking point, throughout the last year. And it just every time at the last minute, it kind of gets delayed. And it does kind of seem like it's getting to the point where these things are really going to start to come in conflict with one another. And I don't know what that's going to look like in American society.
Yeah, I think that is an inevitability. I think it's going to happen. When, I'm not sure, but I don't know. You can't keep, we can't even get a minimum wage increase passed. And the cost of living just keeps going up. Wealth keeps, concentrating at the top. Was it 5 million new millionaires were minted during the pandemic?
It's been basically one of the history's biggest upward transfers of wealth, in the history of America and the world, which just doesn't seem healthy to me.
It's the economy's become like Bitcoin, where it's like you look at it, it's like 1 year someone's wealth is doubled. And it's like, obviously the rich are going to do well, but Jesus Christ, it's like this insane volatility, and everybody's just like, yeah, that's fine. Like Jeff Bezos gains.
Just got to work harder, dude.
It's insane. Like, how can anybody look at this? He just created that much more productivity. He just doubled his productivity in 6 months. It's just like there has to be. Yeah, I do get that impression. It's like something has to give, and it's like somehow it just keeps going. Or to go back to what we were talking about before, they can't pass a January 6th commission in the whole country, other than the segment of the country that's very enthusiastic, the minority of the country that's very enthusiastic about the Republican Party. Agrees something should be done, and it's like they can't even do that. And Nancy Pelosi, instead of just going ahead with the biting the bullet and just doing a commission that doesn't get Republican votes because they're clearly not going to support any. It's reported that she was going to do that, and then they backtrack and say, "Oh, actually, she said that she's considering it." And it's like, how have you not done that at this point? The Republicans have made it abundantly clear they're not going to support any kind of inquiry into it. So I don't see what the point is. But yeah, it's just this game of chicken, and it feels like something has to give, and they just keep kicking the can down the road.
Well, you guys got any fun summer plans?
This sucks.
Thinking about? You doing anything cool? Grilling maybe a little bit?
Probably game a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I've got a plug if you're still listening. This weekend,
unless you've turned the podcast off in utter despair and just taking a cold shower, just in your clothes, just sitting on the shower floor, just sobbing.
That's some confidence in your audience. It's like, well, if you're still around,
I don't know, man. If you reach this point, you're going down with the ship with us.
Yeah. Only the true gamers are still listening at this point.
Mm-hmm. I'll put it in the show notes as well for the people who are cowards and turned it off. But this weekend, June 26th and 27th, an all weekend Fortnite charity stream to benefit healthcare for the homeless in Baltimore. Starting at noon Eastern on my Twitch channel, really_chill_guy. But you could just go to helpthehomelessnow.com and everything is right there. The ability to donate, the ability to watch the stream, everything is right there. helpthehomelessnow.com. And then on Sunday from noon to midnight, it'll be on TYT's channel. Same link. It all still works, and it all goes to healthcare for the homeless in Baltimore. And we're gonna have tons and tons of guests. Rob is playing. We've got lots of recognizable folks are going to play. It's going to be fun. And when you donate, you fuck with our game. So if you donate $25, we have to drop our best item. If you donate $100, we have to drop all our items and a few other fun donation amounts mixed in there as well. So it's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to raise, I hope, a bunch of money for healthcare for the homeless. It's working tirelessly to get people who are unhoused in Baltimore vaccinated, among many other things, provide essential services. They're an essential lifeline in that city. It's going to be a ton of fun, so come on out, fuck with us in Fortnite. It's going to be great. Helpthehomelessnow.com.
Very nice. That's a positive
way to... positive thing.
Yeah. Balance things out here. We were just talking about, you're like the intelligence community now. You've got to do the both sides.
Well, I asked Ken also if he wanted to play, and he was like, "No." I'm not really a gamer, but my main reason for my objection is that I just hate homeless people. It's like, oh, okay.
No, I feel like my quota. I'm tapped out on getting fucked with by Jordan in particular on Twitter. I get enough of that there. I don't think
you've put in your time.
Yeah, he does the equivalent of making me drop my primary weapon. That's the equivalent of my experience on Twitter every day.
I am also going to play. I am very bad at Fortnite. Even without getting fucked with, I'm often getting instantly murked by 12-year-olds. So if you want to see me get humiliated, which I know many people for whatever reason they enjoy this. I don't really. It's a little upsetting to me actually, but if you enjoy that, then that's what we're going to be doing, and for a good cause as well. So
yeah,
very nice. Be good. Happy to be involved with that. Well, thanks, Ken. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Do you have anything else? We talked about your scoops. Do you have anything else you want to plug? Any final comment?
No. I feel like we summarized what I've been working on pretty well.
All right.
Nobody click on Ken's work. That he does no plug. Don't even go out of the way to find it.
Ken's Intercept page is a no reader zone.
We're taking it down. Yep,
exactly.
Banning it.
We don't want it's banned.
I've done a DDoS attack on Ken's bio page on the Intercept site. Just that sub site.
Well, thanks everyone. Thank you, Jordan and Ken. It was a pleasure to connect with you too. Once again, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back soon, and that's all. Goodbye. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Sorry. 1 second. Oh, this is so stupid.
What?
The fucking battery on my mouse has run out and I can't click.
Keep us in the episode.
I cannot click the stop recording.
Yikes.
Button.
Oh, now we've just got to do it for another 12 hours.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I probably could just go out and buy a battery at some point, but that would just be too easy.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to The Insurgents. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can find us on iTunes or Spotify or at Substack, theinsurgents.substack.com. You'll get the latest episodes delivered straight to your inbox as well as our newsletter. On Twitter, we are at InsurgentsPod. Tweet at us, harass Ken in our replies, and then send us your hate mail to theinsurgentspod@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening.